All right, most athletes think the only way to win is with highlights and with hype. But what if the real edge is consistency, discipline, and doing the little things that no one claps for? Coach Carl Howell has built winning programs everywhere he's gone. He's at almost 500 career wins. Hopefully this season we hit that, and multiple NWAC titles, Final Four run this year, and he's taken many players and given them opportunities or helped them get opportunities at four-year schools and even the NBA. And so what makes Coach Howell unique isn't just, all of the awards and the wins and stuff. It's really how he develops his players on and off the court. And so yeah, I'm excited to have Carl on, and thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you. And I've never scored a point, so I've been blessed with a lot of great players. So
I love that. That's a good way to phrase it. I like that. But now that you're at this almost 500 wins, like you've really done a lot, and yes, that's a team and stuff, but I know that a lot of that comes down to the culture, the standards, the expectations you have for your players. And so when you think about when you bring guys in or when you started a new program, like what are those first things that you really instill in athletes?
Well, first of all, I think, everything I got, I took from somebody else. And I had four tremendous mentors, Coach Dave Quall, who coached here at Skagit when I played exactly 40 years ago. Coach Billings at Tacoma Community College gave me my first shot. Coach Nicholson from Central Washington, who some people might not be as familiar with now because he's almost 100 years old. I was at his 99th birthday party a couple months ago. I was a Hall of Famer, won 700 games. I think most people, think of him as the premier coach in the state of Washington during his time. And then Gil Coleman, who replaced him at Central. Those guys, everything I do, I got from them. Like I don't ever hide that. And I think the thing about all four of those guys is they won at a high level, and there was accountability and discipline and all that stuff. But I think the biggest thing, like when you talk about culture, is just the team is what matters, and there's individual accolades and those are well earned. But the bottom line is really the only stat that matters is a W. And that's what I got from those guys, 100%.
Okay. So what would you say to the athlete then coming into any program? Like what should their mindset be coming into a program when it comes to that team culture?
Well, I think any coach at any level, the team is the most important thing, and you're trying to win, but at the same time, you're developing players and you want them to have individual success as well. But I think the biggest thing is the team and the product on the floor, the product off the floor. I'll give you a great example. I have a new assistant. He's been here with me for 2 years. Great guy, played here at Skagit, Eric Kruger, and he's always amazed by some of our things that we have here. And one of them is we just added a walk-on to our program about 2 weeks ago. And so, I in our group thread, I texted out to our guys. I said, hey, welcome, Ollie to the team, and he'll be joining us. And within 15 minutes, all other 14 players on our team had texted in that group text, welcome, hey, what's up? And I think that kind of says it all, that we've done a good job with that stuff when that's the reaction of the players, because typically walk-ons aren't guys who play a whole lot. They got a tough job. They got to practice every day, and, they get a lot of the benefits. But the one thing they don't get is they don't really get game time. And so those guys are extremely important. And for us, we go out of our way to find the right walk-ons because, you don't want someone who's going to, have unrealistic expectations or be delusional. You have your 8 or 9 people that you're going to play. You may redshirt a guy or two, but the rest of those guys, they have to know what they are and be okay with that. And I think a lot of teams, when things go south, what happens is culture and chemistry and stuff is the first thing to go. And so we really try to make sure that people understand their roles. Like I'm not the guy to promise everybody they're going to start and play all the time. And so I'm comfortable in my own skin, and that I feel like I'm honest to everybody,
No, that's good. And so when it comes to the athlete, so I mean, you've had athletes who go on to play D1. You've had athletes who have gone on to play in the NBA. when you think about the athletes that have really succeeded at this level and been able to go on to higher levels, like what do you feel like really separates them from everybody else?
I mean, talent is a big thing, obviously. I mean, we can joke about it, but like Rodney Stuckey is a world class athlete. Like if Rodney Stuckey played football, he'd play in the NFL as a strong safety. If he ran track, he'd be an Olympic level athlete. Like he is, and Rodney's getting older now, but he's still pretty in good shape. But when he played in college, he was just, you just didn't see kids that age built like that and with that kind of quick twitch. And he was really incredible. And then what I thought put him over the top was he's about as tough a guy as you'll ever be around. His physical toughness is unmatched. So now all of a sudden, because, let's face it, you play in the NBA, you're playing against grown men, and a lot of guys don't make it, not because they're not talented enough, but because they don't have the right mindset. And so he was just so much different that way. I've had guys that, had some of those things he had, but he had all of that. And he just really, really worked on his game. I remember it was funny, people thought when he was at Eastern, oh, well, he can't shoot, he won't be able to score. I mean, I think his career average in the NBA is like 14 points a game over 11 years. It's pretty good. And he worked on that because he did need to improve his shooting. But, I've had, I hate to single guys out because I'll forget about somebody's. I've had a lot of really good players, and I would say all of them that were like Division I, Division II guys that moved on. The one thing I would tell you is they loved the game, and not everybody loves the game. And I think it's really hard to make it at the 4-year level if you don't love it. You can be really talented, but if you're not working all the time and taking care of your body, it's hard.
Do you ever have guys who maybe have that level of talent that could play at the high levels, but they don't put in maybe as much of the work, or maybe something about this level, like playing at TCC or at Skagit, like that gives them this opportunity to like open up doors to them and realize more of their full potential?
Yeah, I think one thing I'll say is I think our guys get better. I mean, I'll use one guy as an example, Silas Williams, who probably is as decorated as any player ever here at Skagit. He had a really good freshman year last year. Was an all-league player, really good player, but came back. He could have left for some smaller 4-year schools, but he came back 10 or 15 pounds heavier. Didn't really shoot the three much as a freshman, shot 40% for us this last year, improved dramatically in areas, and was always in the gym. And his parents are extremely supportive. And, they would get him before I would if he had a bad game, like, which is kind of rare nowadays, but great parents and great work ethic. And he just kept getting better and better. And, he's going to Alaska Anchorage next year. And so that's the most recent one I can think of. But I had a lot of guys at Tacoma. They just got a lot better. And I think that you have to have a work ethic to do that. Like, I don't think it's really an option in our program to not have that, to be honest with you. I don't think guys would be around very long if they didn't love their game and work on it. Yeah.
Okay. So I kind of see in the background you talk about every time he came into a new season, he was better. So I know that you maybe didn't see his training, but I think that's something where we speak of like the work ethic and we speak of the behind the scenes part. Like how essential is the behind the scenes when it comes to really unlocking that full potential?
I'll tell you, it's huge at this level. So our level, Division II, NAI, Division III, we don't get to have full practice in the summer like Division I. Okay, Division I schools, I've been to a lot of Division I practices this summer, UCLA, UWs, and they're in real practice, right? Now their time's limited, so they don't get to go 2 hours every day, but they're in practice. I think they get 8 or 10 weeks in the summer, and so their guys are there on campus, and they're in that. And then aside from that, their practice facilities are open for skill work and everything. Coaches can't do that with them; they've only got so many hours with them, but they get it in. I think the thing about our level, small college, is you have to put in the time in the off season because we don't have you in the summer. My guys leave on the 15th of June and come back on the 15th of September, and they need to be better. Everybody would say that at our level. And so I think it's a mixture. I think if you just do workouts with cones, I don't think you're going to get that better. I think you need to do that and play 5-on-5. Like I think you talk to a lot of coaches and they'll all tell you playing 5-on-5 or 3-on-3 with older, better players is the quickest way to get better. And then at the same time, you do need the individual work, because I had a coach tell me, it was the greatest comment I heard last year, is Steph Curry can become a better shooter, believe it or not. That what that means is, if you don't have the ability to have a personal trainer, or let's say you're in a small town and you don't have the ability to play 5-on-5 or whatever, you can shoot on your own and become a better shooter. But I think that you have to do those things, because for us, we only have them, from we're able to start workouts in September and then our season's over in mid-March. And then as you get going in the season, your practices are more technical
Hmm.
and it's more team stuff and everything. It's not individual workout stuff. So I've always thought that the off season was the time to improve and the season is the time to win. And that's how I've always looked at it.
Yeah, I mean that's where a lot of, and it's interesting. I'm curious your thoughts on how high school is nowadays. In the basketball world, there's AAU, there's in the baseball, there's travel baseball, like there's all these different off-season activities that are focused on that one sport, and it's more playing versus, like you say, developing and whatnot. Like, what are your thoughts on just how this is impacting even the development of high school players?
Well, yeah, I think when you hear all those like USA basketball guys talk, and they all talk about how in Europe, the reason why Europe's getting so good now is they have one game a week and they practice the other 6 days, right? And they work on individual work and their teamwork. Whereas with youth basketball in the US, you don't really practice, but you play a million games. You'll play 6 games in a weekend. And so, but I think it's a balance. I do, you get better from playing games, but you also need, direction and, and improving your skills and all those things. I think it's a mix. I think sometimes, look, there's good and bad of everything. I hear a lot of people kill AAU basketball all the time, right? Well, there's good AAU basketball, right? And there's good college basketball, there's bad college basketball. Good high school, bad high school. It's like I always say, there's people always blame officials. There's good officials, bad officials. There's good players, bad players. There's good coaches, bad coaches. So it's what you do with it, And so I think that I know this. I know as a kid, I would have loved to had AAU basketball when I grew up, because we didn't have it. I would have wanted to play. But I do think that practice is just as important. Like, you can't just practice all summer and you can't just play games all summer if you're in AAU. I think you got to have a good medium there.
Yeah. I'm just curious, this specific to basketball. Like, I like to hear from college coaches. Your perspective is, traditionally a lot of the basketball players are a lot smaller in general, like thinner, skinnier. And I like, even when I work with a baseball or football player and they're like, oh, I want to gain size. And I'm like, well, you're not doing it playing basketball. Like, so I mean, because they'll play all winter and then they have no window for the development side of things of like gaining the size. So how important would you say, because you mentioned just in your example earlier of like, gaining 10, 15 pounds in the off season, how important do you think it is for a high school player to be developed, getting stronger in that sense before college?
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to. Now, listen, everybody's bodies are different. You'll see people, that will still be thin when they're 30 some years old that lift all the time and everything, right? I mean, but, everybody has different bodies, but we had a great strength training coach at Eastern Washington when I was there. And he had like a football mentality. He was a tough guy. He worked them hard. And I remember he used to always tell our guys that were supposed to gain weight and get bigger, you have to eat.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we're lifting and everything, but you have to eat calories. You're going to burn them all off. And so, I think that's the biggest thing. Like, what you specialize in is, I mean, the nutritional part, is right there with the workout part. I mean, you can lift weights all you want. If you don't eat and eat the right stuff, you're not going to see the results you want, So I think all those things. And what's funny is kids nowadays, they have access to all this stuff. People my age, we didn't have any of this. Like, we lifted and basically got it from our football coach in high school or whatever, and this and that, but we didn't know anything about nutrition or, any of those kinds of things. So I think it's making sure, like, I always look at it this way, like, what do you do to help you get better and to help the team win? And if things you're doing don't do those two things, then I wouldn't do them. That's what I always say. What makes you better and makes us better?
Well, and
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that's easy to forget as a player when you're trying to get recruited and you're trying to, have all these opportunities. Is a lot of times it's focused on you, especially if you're like the star of your team or something. But it's like, like you said, it's yes, helping you succeed, but also let's not forget helping the team succeed too, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll take you one step further, and I'm going to say this. A lot of other coaches wish they could say this. I'll be honest. We only recruit guys that go to the postseason. I've kind of had that rule, and the couple times that I've kind of made an exception, it hasn't worked. And that isn't to punish any great kid who just happens to be in a bad team. It's more about, I think if you're winning and you're playing in the postseason, you've had to learn something about winning. Hard work, sacrifice. Now, granted, you may just be lucky at some high school and have, once in a million type team where you just have 10 times better players than everybody and you win because of that. But even with that, you're winning. So winning's good, and like I tell our guys, we win, everybody wins. Okay. I mean, last year we had a great year, last couple of years, matter of fact. And we've had kids who averaged less than 10 points a game get full scholarships. And yet when you talk to high school parents and high school kids, they think they got to get 20 to get anything, right? And the good teams will have players who get scholarships over the bad teams who have guys that, average 25 a game, but their team didn't win a game or they won 2 games, and especially nowadays with all the social media and all the involvement from everybody. Look, all of us coaches, we don't want a lot of drama and we don't need it. Nobody does. And so, like, you don't want that person who's just looking to score 20 every night and the parent who's sending clips out every single day. That's not healthy. And it's not healthy for your team. And so sometimes I don't think college coaches are honest with people about that. But like I said, I don't care. Nobody wants to deal with all that stuff. They don't. We had a situation this year in our league, and a guy's a good friend of mine. He's a good coach, and
I feel like from what I see, obviously, like me not being directly in it, but being like around it, there's definitely a lot of interesting culture there. And it doesn't matter what sport, baseball, football, like all of them are having the same intensity of that parent coach culture dynamic.
yeah, yeah. I think, and I get along with our parents. I do. I don't. We don't have issues like that here, but I also think we don't have issues like that because of the people we bring in. And I think the other thing, like when you get back to culture, is like I've always thought this is you need to reward success, not mediocrity. You reward mediocrity, whether it's in the business world or on a team or whatever. The high achievers are going to be resentful of that, and you want high achievers. And so I think when you start rewarding mediocrity, I think that's the first sign of losing, to be honest with you.
That's good. That's really good. We can unpack that plenty. I think the listeners got the message loud and clear though on that, because it is. I mean, there's just so much to that, and I think if you want to be great, then to reward greatness, not average, basically.
And that doesn't mean you're disrespectful to average. It just means
Mhm.
you reward success. But yeah, I just think you pick up a lot of things along the way when you've been in it this long, and that's one thing that's always kind of stuck with me is we will never reward mediocrity. We just don't.
Yeah. One thing too that you were talking about is you mentioned the social media piece, and athletes nowadays, there's so many things coming at them noise wise. So like you said, social media, there's obviously NIL and transfer portal, like there's just so much noise. Like what would your advice be to athletes, especially the high school athlete trying to figure this out and prepare for, potentially that next level with all of that?
Well, I mean, I think you have to be accountable. Like I'll tell you what, when we lose a game, it isn't anybody's fault but mine. You'll never hear me ever blame it on anybody but myself if we lose a game. And that's just the way I feel. And I think with young kids, you need to, the noise that's around you, are they really trying to help you? Or are they just an igniter? Are they just blaming somebody else? Because if you're really trying to help a kid, all of these things we've talked about, being accountable and having discipline and working hard and doing all those things. If you do all those things, now you have to have some talent too, but it's usually going to work out. But if there's jealousy and envy and that kind of stuff, it's tough. And I think that goes back to what I was talking about with wanting kids from winning programs that played in the postseason is a lot of times that kind of stuff kind of gets taken care of if you're winning, opposed to if you're losing. If you're losing, there's always a lot of finger pointing, a lot. And so, but I just think be realistic and be accountable, you know. And it's like I tell our guys, I don't know what it is now. It's like 2% of the high school players play in college or something. It's a very low number. And it's like, look, we think this is a big deal here at Skagit. We take this like we're at a Division I school. Like people find that hard to believe, but it is what it is that way. And so if you're playing here on a really good college team, that's a positive. You know, I mean, you've accomplished something to be able to be on a college basketball team at any level. And so, but yeah, I do. I feel bad for kids with all this stuff because there's just so much noise and there's so much emphasis on individualism. It's like, you know, it's not great. Like I tell you, you know, if you want to get recruited, I probably wouldn't put, you know, highlights of you dunking in a gym with nobody in it all the time on your Twitter or whatever to get recruited and stuff. It's just, it's tough for coaches, man. I'm telling you, it's hard now for coaches, players, everybody. And the last thing people want is our problems.
Yeah. Well, and what are some other off? Because I mean, behavior and just that overall meatism, I guess, could be a word for that. But it's aside from that, what are some other off the court things that you're like, these are really important things that either athletes need to learn, or maybe at the college level they should start, really developing, or things that the college level helps with.
Yeah, well, I think one thing I forgot to mention, the biggest thing is, you know, you have to be coachable to get better. And so that's first and foremost. And then I just think, you know, everybody's under a microscope. I think back when I was in college, there was no cell phones, no camera phones. Things that we laughed about and thought were funny jokes back then, or all of a sudden they're like crimes now, right? Because kids, it's a different world. So you got to really be careful that way. My thing to our guys is treat people the way you want to be treated. That's the simplest thing. And not everybody's perfect and everybody's had issues at some point in their life. But I think when you talk about the behavior, obviously nobody wants somebody that's always in trouble. I mean, that's a given. Having a good attitude and being coachable and that kind of thing is really probably what every coach is looking for.
I mean, yeah, you gotta be able to. A coach has got to be able to have a conversation with you and you actually listen, basically.
Well, yeah, you have to. And that's where the accountability comes in. It's like, look, like I said before, coaches, officials, players, everybody makes mistakes throughout a game. I've never coached a perfect game. I don't think I've ever had a player that's played a perfect game or had an official that hasn't missed a call. It happens. And so you just learn from it, you know, and I think the minute you stop learning, you're in trouble. And it's funny, we talk about kids, but I talk about young coaches. When I first started coaching, when I was younger, man, every time you had a chance to go to a coaching clinic or you could go watch a college practice or anything you could do that way, you did it. And I don't think you see that as much anymore. There's people that still do, but you just don't see it as much anymore that way. I think now part of it is technology, so you can get a lot of this stuff online. You can zoom in on a coaching clinic or whatever. That's all fine. But I just think being there and meeting other people and networking and stuff. I mean, I say it to this day, you know, like we have really good players here because I have a lot of really good friends who send me good players. That's a fact. I mean, I can sit here and talk about what a great recruiter I think I am or what people think, but the reality of it is that you go up and down our roster and there's a connection at some point, either a former player of mine or, you know, a guy I played with in college or a high school coach who's a friend of mine or a four-year school sent somebody here. That's why it's so important to network. I'm a poster child of that because I've really, you know, got a lot. I've had a lot of good players sent to me.
That's something, I mean, you say it for like the young coaches, but I think for the athletes as well, I've this is my third podcast for the day, and every single one of them has talked about networking in some capacity, or understanding the fact that the coaches network, like you just said. And it's like, yeah, you never know
You know,
what happens. I'll let you
no,
expand.
I have a great analogy for that. I'll just tell you a story. It's like I can't tell you, and I'm speaking. I could say everybody in our league gets these emails. You know, you get an email or a phone call from a kid who, you know, when you ask, okay, so how'd you do last year? Oh man, my coach, he didn't play me, man. My coach didn't like me, this and that. First of all, I don't know one coach who's trying to lose. I don't. So this whole thing about blaming the coach has always been interesting to me because I don't know of a coach who's trying to lose. Maybe a coach evaluates differently than what the kid would want to be or whatever. I don't know. I'm not saying mistakes haven't been made that way. I'm sure there's kids that maybe could have played more than they did. But the first time I hear something like that, I'm out. We won't have any more conversations. That is the biggest loser excuse of all time is, yeah, my coach didn't like me or my coach screwed me over or whatever. And every coach would tell you that because we all joke about it. Hey, did you get the email from so and so? Oh yeah, did you get that? But it just keeps happening year after year. It just does, and it's funny because when you have success, there's teams that don't, And so I've gotten emails from people who that haven't had the success we've had, and kids who've hardly played for those teams who try to tell me that they'll start on our team and that, they were the best player. They just didn't get a chance and stuff. And it's like, that's just, it's delusional.
I mean, it's just like any relationship that you build, like you have to understand number one, like how are you presenting yourself? And if you're presenting yourself as somebody who blames, like you said, like no coach wants somebody who is a blamer. Like that's not a good culture.
And the thing is like all of us coaches talk like, yeah, I have coaching friends in the NWAC that I'm closer to than others, guys that I don't really talk to, whatever. But when those things come up, you even talk to a guy maybe you haven't talked to 2 or 3 years ago, you'll get a call or you'll call them or whatever about a situation like that. And it's funny because the coaches do talk, and I don't know that parents and kids always get that part. And the other thing is the statistical stuff. You can go online and look at anybody's stats. So, you have a guy email you and tell you he's averaging this, that, and the other, and he's not even close to that. Probably going to have problems if you take him. But as much as we're talking about the delusional situations, I don't have it that much. I'll be honest. We have really good kids and supportive parents, and I'm sure that they've not been happy every second of every day with something, but we just don't have issues like that. But I think it's because we're pretty careful in who we bring too, and when you have a reputation, like I told one kid who was talking to me and I didn't know him, and I kind of like to know somebody that at least knows somebody. And I asked him if he'd ever been yelled at before, and he kind of paused, and I said, "Well, it's not going to be unfair, but if you come here, you're going to get yelled at. I mean, you just are, and it's not personal, but it's gonna happen." And he had a long pause, and I knew right away wouldn't be a good fit for him. Right. And again, I'll admit this, but every other coach will tell you the kind of the same thing. They won't go on a podcast and admit it. They'll want to act like they're the nicest guys in the world, but you're going to get yelled at in college basketball. Just watch TV. You're going to. And so you have to be able to take it. It's every level of college is a jump from high school. And yeah, there's the great high school players that go to Duke and all these places, no question. They're elite level. But, anybody that comes to college, you're kind of at the level you're supposed to be. So it's going to be a big jump. And I remember one of our best players who we've had the last 2 years, Amari Jackson, great kid. He played at O'Day, and he's going to University of Mary in North Dakota, Division II school. And I remember when he first got here, he told me, "Coach, man, these guys are way better than I thought." And now he's a good player. Now he's an all league, all region, all American junior college player, double figure score both years, played on great teams. And he said that. And so I think sometimes people, when they think of JC, it's like, well, that's my last resort. I was going to go Division I, but, and the funny thing is with this transfer portal, high school kids are really, I feel bad for them. Kids before COVID and before the transfer portal who would have went Division I out of high school, some of those types of guys are ending up in our league, honestly. You just look and everybody wants to be old. All the Division I schools want to be old, you know? We want to be old. I don't want to start five true freshmen. And so it's different. And I feel bad for those kids. I do, because the recruiting, it's just totally changed. It's totally changed, with the high school. Like if you're a top 50 high school player, maybe even only top 25, you'll still get that same level. But if you're a top 100 kid, you may end up at a still Division I, but at a level lower than what you would have been at a couple years ago. But the good thing there is you can go and play really well at that place and then go get paid to bounce back up. So but it's interesting. The recruiting thing is really, really interesting. I have a kid who, never dreamed he would be here. And like I tell him, listen, when you guys are playing your senior year, I don't expect Skagit Valley College to be your dream school. Okay, I'm not stupid. But when reality sets in, you have to be okay with whatever level you're at and take the most of it, make the most of the situation. And so we have a kid who was just like that. And you know what? He probably is better than this level prior to COVID and in the portal. He is. But this is the hand you're dealt. You know, it's like I tell our guys, hey, you don't think I want to be the coach at Gonzaga or Washington or something? Of course I do. Everybody does. So do I just not try here, or do I try and make this like those places? You know? And so that's the way I look at it.
Yeah. And again, it's funny because same thing. One of the college coaches I had on earlier said that exact same thing, just in different words of, yeah, pre-COVID, there's a lot of kids who would have been at those Division I levels, and now it's shifted.
And I'm not as familiar. I mean, I'm a huge college football fan and stuff. And, you know, I like all sports, but I don't follow those sports like basketball. So, but I assume it's the same thing in those sports that high school kids are getting under recruited.
Yeah. It was a college baseball coach. So same exact,
Yeah.
same exact thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I mean it's like I said, it's unfortunate because the funny thing when I was at Tacoma all those years, not all of them, but a lot of the good kids I had that went Division 1 were what they called non-qualifiers back in those days. Didn't have a high enough GPA or a SAT score, you know, that, and so everyone knew they were really good. It's just they had to go to a junior college, right? Community college. The academic standards in the NCAA have been so low, they've just lessened all of that stuff now to where you don't see that very often anymore. You don't see a kid who's a Division 1 type player who has to go to community college. I mean, they're out there, but you don't see them as often as you used to. You
Mhm.
know, those kids are now able, the majority of them are able to go right to Division 1 if you know, if they're at that level.
Interesting. As we wrap up, we've hit so many different angles. The physical side, the development, the off season, the mental side of things, all the different things. And if you were sitting in front of a group of athletes, and this could be basketball, this could be in general, I think it'll apply to everybody. But for those listening who want to play at that next level, like what would you want them to walk away with the most?
I mean, you have to love the game. The older I've gotten, especially the last 4 or 5 years, that's been my biggest thing is you have to love the game. I didn't used to talk about that when I was younger, but I do now because I think it encompasses so much. If you love the game, you're working on your game all the time. You're in the weight room, you know, you're eating right. You're doing all of those things because you love the game so much. You want to be successful. And I think that loving the game is the big thing. And I think you have to be honest with yourself and be accountable. Like, not everybody's the same genetically. Not everybody's 6'6", you know? And so you have to be realistic too. And that's the big thing. And if you're a Division 3 player, then be a hell of a Division 3 player. If you're a Division 1 player, then be a hell of a Division 1 player. I think that I just hear it so often that different levels are frowned upon from people. And it's just funny because it's like, you should want to be as successful as you can be at the level that you should be at. And that's what it comes down to for me is I hear it all the time. It's really expensive to go to a Division 3 school, and Division 3 schools don't have scholarships. So they get a bad rep because not only do you have to be a really high level student, you know, but then you have to, you know, pay a lot of money. And so in saying that, there's some great Division 3 basketball, right? And so like, you know, sometimes you hear that, you know, that's the only offer a kid has at maybe that level. And well, I don't want to go there. You know, I'm going to wait it out and see if I can get a scholarship. And, you know, that's where it's tough because now if you don't have the means or you don't get financial aid or academic scholarships and you can't figure out the financial part, that's understandable. But if you can figure out the financial part and you're just think you're above that level, but that's all that's recruiting you, then it's hard because you are what you're recruited. That's a fact. I spoke at a clinic earlier this year, and I remember telling somebody, "Hey, high school and community colleges, they don't give 4-year scholarships. We don't give them. We all promote our players and do everything we can for them, but you can't blame a high school coach or a community college coach if a kid doesn't get a 4-year scholarship. It's we don't give them, and so we do everything we can to promote that and to put kids in place and everything. But that's kind of when it comes back to the accountability thing. It's you blaming somebody, you know. And there's success stories. I mean, there's kids that still walk on and end up being great players. And so there's exceptions to everything, I think. But I just think that, you are what you're recruited at. And if you understand that, it'll help you be successful instead of always trying to one up that. And again, in today's society, you know what? Every school's like junior college. Every level of four-year school you go to, if you play well enough, you can bump up a level and even get paid to do it. And so it's funny because I talked to an ex-AD friend of mine, and he's like, Carl, honestly, four-year college basketball is like junior college now. They know what it feels like to be you guys, to have high roster turnover year in and year out. And it's true. But the good thing is in the old days, if you went to a lower level, to transfer was extremely difficult. You had to sit out a year. You didn't get any NIL money, all of those things. But now, it's like I told a friend of mine, he has a very good player who's a son, very good player. He's a Division I player. Probably will be a little bit under recruited because of size, but definitely will have multiple Division I offers. And I said, look, go to one of those places and kill it, and then move up. Don't be disappointed with the level that is recruiting you. Go there and make the most of it. Know you're going to play all the time, and then transfer. Which sounds so weird because every coach, like in the old days, no one wanted to talk about transferring. No one. I mean, it's I have a very good friend of mine who gets it. He's a high level Division I coach. He's a great guy. He just says you just happen to be open to where if somebody else can pay the kid a lot more money and give him a better experience, you have to be open to it. And the better experience part, I don't think he really meant that as much as he meant, look, if our NIL budget's this much and we can only give this kid $200,000, but this school can give him $1 million, he needs to go. That's life-changing money. And I think more and more coaches are starting to think that way. I think it's been hard. I mean, like I said, I'm not at that level, and I'm glad because it's funny. It used to be at Division I, the type of program you had and the way you recruited and the style of play and all those things were a factor in if a kid wanted to come to your place. It's all money now. If you can pay more than the other guy, you're going to get them, which is really strange because, you see all these blue blood programs and all of a sudden now people are catching up to them money wise. And there's parity. Now, the one thing you won't see, I don't think you'll see mid-major teams upset people in the NCAA tournament anymore because people are going to take those players. You're not going to see an old mid-major team who goes and gets to a Sweet 16 because somebody had already taken the guys by the time they're going to be sophomores or juniors. So it's an interesting time. But, you just make the most of the situation is my advice.
I love that you mentioned though the love of the game piece, because that's where when you talk about this, taking the opportunities and taking whatever options you have, like that's where the love of the game comes in. Like if I hear athletes all the time say, I want to play my sport as long as possible. It's like, okay, well, like, do you understand that that might be not playing it at the level that you want to play at? And that's where, sometimes you have to accept what you have because you're like, I would rather do that than not be playing the game at all.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I think and at the same time, I'll say this, college should be the most enjoyable time of your life before you really have a lot of responsibilities and burdens and everything. And so I want our guys to be kids. I think it's important for high school kids, college kids. Like there needs to be a good balance between their sport and their life, so to speak. And that's where it's just so weird with you almost have to specialize in high school sports now. When I was a kid, you had to play everything. It's like, I went to a small school, and if you didn't play everything, there wouldn't be enough guys to have a team. And it's just a different. It's now seasons are overlapping and stuff. Seasons go longer than they used to, and so it's really hard to do now. But it didn't used to be like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be it's interesting. I mean, I'm already seeing this shift of less and less of the multi-sport athletes, but I still see there being value, but I definitely see what you mean of like it makes it a lot harder when you have this travel or this travel league is going during this season, and all the different overlaps, like you said, can make it much like players have to be clear on what their primary sport is. Well, I really appreciate you hopping on today. And I think, again, athletes, like there's a lot of these things of the things that coaches look for. Again, you're speaking or you're listening to a college coach right now, and you're listening to a college coach that has a lot of college coach connections and understands, what is required. And so really like go back and reflect on some of this stuff and make sure that you're checking those boxes. But, coach, I really thank you for coming on, number one. And then, number two, what's the best way for athletes to connect with you, and whether it be to follow or to even reach out?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's emails on their school websites. I mean, that's the way, and I think we certainly get a lot of emails that way. I think from a recruiting standpoint, I still think that college coaches prefer to watch kids play and watch them in AAU and high school and kind of go through their coaches first and stuff. But I'm always open to anyone who wants to talk basketball. I mean, I love the game. I could talk all day. So anyone that wants to reach out to me, I'm good with that. But yeah, that's one thing that's a lot different nowadays than years and years ago is unless you physically went somewhere or had a coach's private number, you probably weren't going to be able to have any kind of interaction with them, where now you have all kinds of opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, coach, thanks again for hopping on.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And for the listeners, as always, keep striving for greatness.